Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina. Today is January 4th, and this is our first episode of the year. And the first thing I like to do is say happy birthday to my sister Yolanda. Tomorrow is her birthday. I am the Tina of Widowhood Real Talk, and I wanted to take this opportunity to do something a little bit different than we did last year and introduce myself and actually do a solo conversation. I have a couple of notes right here to make sure I cover everything. My journey for 2023 has been amazing. I am so grateful for every person that allowed me to just be on this journey with them. I would have never thought that the podcast, our social content, would have reached over 73 countries and over 1 million views. That just tells me how many people are out there that need to know that they are not alone on this grief journey. And I want you to know that I know it's difficult. I know it is not something any of us wanted to have happen. But if my loss, the death of my husband, has been able to encourage you, then there has been purpose made out of my pain. And I know over the conversations in 2023, I've spoken to a lot of people, but I wanted to take a little bit of time to share more of my journey and why this is just so important to me. My husband, Mark, was a wonderful husband. He was a wonderful father, a brother, a son, an uncle. He was a wonderful friend. And my opportunity to continually share his memory and honor him allows me to keep his memory alive. It has shown me how devastating the death of a loved one is and how impactful, how it changes your life forever. And I've also learned that there are so many people doing this by themselves. So many people that feel muted because their loved one has died and they feel like they don't have some place to turn or they don't feel like someone cares. And I want you to know my experience has changed my life forever. And I love Mark and I am so grateful for him being in my life for those 32 years. And I'm grateful that I can use what I have learned from his death and in my continual living to be able to show up for people in a way that I never knew that was necessary. And that is why Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, I want you to know that we are more than a podcast. We are an entire 501c3 organization set up with the mission to support people who are grieving around the world. And the word widowhood was intentionally chosen because I'm from Chicago. And hood to me means family. And when my husband Mark died, my children were impacted. My parents were impacted. My friends, my cousins, my aunts, my uncle. And when our loved one passes, it is our entire community that is taking on part of that loss. And that is why Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, our conversations are with widows. It is with widowers, but it is also with their family. It is with their children. It is with every aspect of that community. And you will see a lot of that in 2024, where our conversations will start to broaden to that entire community. Because yes, that widow or widower is impacted, but I want that entire community to be able to show up, to be able to share, and let that widow and widower know that they are not alone, that it is their entire community that is impacted. We will have conversations in 2024 with realtors, with a financial advisor, with a lawyer, because there are so many components to the death of a loved one. It is way more than just the funeral. The death of our loved one impacts us for years and years and for the rest of our life. And that is why the conversations that we're having is important, to be able to have something to leverage, to be able to have resources. And as far as those resources, if you go to our website, you'll be able to connect if you're looking for a therapist, if you're looking for a group to connect with. We actually have a group where we connect people together. Every second Thursday of the month, Mr. James Price will be hosting a peer-to-peer support group for men. And on the last Thursday of the month, I will host a peer-to-peer support group for anyone who is grieving. And you may wonder, why is there just a group for men? Because men, I feel, and from the statistics, suffer more from having a safe space where they can talk about their emotions, their struggles, and feel like there are other men there that care. And that is why I intentionally partnered with the Mr. James Price to be able to provide that support to men. James is able to provide that peer-to-peer support because he unfortunately has lost his wife and their child soon after giving birth. And he knows what that is like, to be able to be in that space, to be able to be comforted, and to be able to be supported. So when I reached out to him, he was gracious and willing to be able to be there in a space that he knows that men can benefit from. So once again, on the second Thursday of every month from 6 to 7 Eastern Time, you can be able to connect with Mr. James Price, and you can find that information on our website. I will host a peer-to-peer support group on the last Thursday of every month, and that is open to everyone. Another thing that I want you to look forward to in 2024, that during the month of August, we will have what's called a Walk for Love. And we will ask for 7 days in the month of August that you would walk for 1 mile. You may walk that 1 mile at home. You may walk it somewhere in your neighborhood, and you may ask why. When we are grieving, we often become closed off. We often become isolated from people that we know. And our health is impacted from sometimes not being able to exercise and dealing with deep sorrow and sometimes depression. And being able to get out in August when the vitamin D is really strong and to be able to walk just 1 mile a day will let you know and be able to see people around the entire world walking. And there'll be details on our website as far as information that we want you to post pictures and how people will engage with each other. Also, next in this year, 2024, we will also be having a workshop called Dealing with Grief During the Holidays, because the holidays brings on some unique impacts to our grief. And oftentimes people are grieving throughout the year, and the holidays come and it's like that grief just hits you and sucker punches you from out of nowhere. And sometimes people feel like their grief is going backwards. It's not. It's just the way the holidays impacts our grief. So we are getting some mental health professionals together to be able to give us tips and tools and coping skills on how to deal with grief during the holidays. And in December, we will actually be having an in-person event here in the Norfolk area if you want to come, and it's called Surviving the Winter Holidays. We want to just get together. No, it won't be something super fancy and dressing up. You can come in blue jeans. You can be relaxed. It's an opportunity for people to connect and get together. A lot of people I have been able to interact with over social media platforms, and people want to get together. So we thought it would be a good opportunity to extend that and let you know what's coming down the pike for 2024. Let me see. I think I covered everything as far as what we have going on for the holidays. Oh, I also wanted to let you know that yes, thank you for watching our podcast. But if you feel that you want to share your journey on this podcast, please go to our website, widowhoodrealtalkwithtina.org, and you can submit and send us an email if you'd like to share your journey. I would love to hear from you. I would love to connect. I would love to share your journey. Also, if you are interested in a one-on-one peer-to-peer support meeting, go to our website, send me a message, and we can try to connect because I am on this journey with you. It's not just this podcast. I am here to walk on this journey. Our board members are here supporting. And if you've watched this podcast and you have just felt so connected, we are a nonprofit, and you can go to our website and you are welcome to donate, sponsor a podcast, anything that you would feel that would be able to help us to help someone else. We also, I forgot to mention, we also donate books to people who are grieving based on the donations that we receive from people. And that book is I Wasn't Ready to Say Goodbye. And I came across that book. And actually, let me give you a little bit about my journey and how I came to that book. On March 11th, 2017, my husband Mark and I were on a mini vacation. Mark had taken a job in Virginia, and I was still living in Pennsylvania with our children. Well, actually, our son Alexander was in the Navy at the time. And we had been working, and Mark had been in Virginia, and we hadn't seen each other for a while. And I called him and asked him if he wanted to get together. And what does any man that wants to be with his wife? He says, absolutely, I want to get together with you. And sometimes you make a decision and you don't really understand what that decision will be. And my decision to want to get together with Mark wasn't just my choice. I was at work and I was just doing some things there, and I actually was supposed to go on a trip. And I really heard God just speaking to my soul saying, you need to cancel that trip. And I was like, that seems so bizarre. But I knew it was something that I was sensing that it wasn't my own thought. And I said, okay, I spoke with people at work and told them that I couldn't go on that trip. And after the trip was canceled, the next thing I heard God saying is, you need to spend some time with your husband. And I know everyone has their own faith. I'm just sharing my journey and how important this was to me. And I was like, okay. And I canceled some other obligations I had. And I called Mark and asked him if he wanted to get together that weekend. And he said yes. And I remember we met in Delaware. And it was a military base there. And it was halfway between where I was living in Pennsylvania and where he was in Virginia. And I remember us getting together and meeting him at the barracks, or I should say the guest house, and we were on base. And we went upstairs and we reconnected. And then I asked him where he wanted to go out to eat. And he said Chinese food, which is probably like one of my favorite places to go. But Mark is a steak and potato kind of person. And but he said Chinese, and I went with it. And as we had the Chinese dinner, I took a picture of him, and I was just took that picture actually to send to our children to let them know I was with their dad. And I actually did send that to Catherine Alexander later. Then after that, we went to the movies. We went to go see, I want to say one of the last Wolverine movies. And I remember after the movies, we were walking around the mall, and I had my Fitbit on, and I didn't have my 10,000 steps for the day. And we were walking around the mall, and I guess it was a security guard or somebody there. And he said, what are you guys doing back here? And I remember just holding Mark and just walking and talking, going, no, I'm just getting my last steps in. And he was like, what are you two here? Are you even married? I said, married? I've been with this man for 29 years. Are you kidding me? And I remember just laughing. And we went back to the room. And the next day, he just had gas really bad. He went over, we were to get something to eat, and came back. And that day, that moment in that hotel room was going to be the last time I spoke to him. He had a heart attack in that room. And I remember calling downstairs to the lobby, letting them know that I was in an emergency situation and the medics coming up and the MPs because we were on a military installation. And I remember being at the end of the hallway screaming to somebody on the phone that I could not believe that this is how our story was going to end. And I remember the MP giving me directions and trying to tell me how to get to the hospital. And I was like, I have no clue how to get there, how that's going to work. And they escorted me there. And I remember being in the hospital and the doctor came up to me and he said, "Are you Mrs. Fornwald?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I need to speak with you." And they brought me into a private room. And I remember thinking, this is not good. This is not good. He didn't talk to me in the lobby and he said that your husband has had a massive heart attack. And I remember writing down and trying to understand what massive meant. And he said, we need to see if he'll just get through the night. And I remember thinking, I'm going to take off from work. I'm going to be his nurse. I'm going to make sure that he's fine. And in the course of the events of that night, he passed away. And I remember wanting to see him so bad and them making me wait in the waiting room because he wasn't presentable of all the things they had tried to do to work on him. And I remember going into the room where his body was. And this was the first time I had ever touched a dead body in my entire life. And I was rubbing his face. And I was touching his hand and his arms. And I remember touching his hand and it was cold. And I was thinking, just 24 hours ago, that hand was around me and it's cold. And I remember screaming and climbing on that table next to him. And I remember being on the floor crying and screaming. And I was so grateful that the nurses and the doctors, they didn't try to make me stop crying. They allowed me to feel how I was feeling. And the only time they came into that room was to tell me that my daughter was there and that she was coming. The doctors and the nurse came into the room when my daughter Catherine was there, and they told me that your daughter's in the hospital and she's on her way up. And that was just enough time for me to get myself together. And when my daughter came, I just gave her space to just be in the room by herself with her dad. And then I came in there with her. And I remember there were friends and family coming to meet me because I was in Delaware, which was about 3.5 hours from where I lived. And I had Mark's car. And my life was devastated. We thought that the children were getting older. We were about to be empty nesters. And we were going to have this next phase of our life to enjoy. And he was dead. And I remember that first night, my daughter asked me, Mom, what do we do? And for the first time in her life, I told her, I do not know. I did not know what I was going to do. I was numb. I was devastated. And there were friends coming to be with us that night and family. And just trying to figure out day by day what I needed to do next. I needed to get Mark's car back to where we lived. I needed to get myself there. I called friends and they drove me back, our vehicle. Other people came to get Mark's car. In so much of that first year, I don't remember all of the details because it was just so foggy. But I know for me, if it wasn't for me tuning in to my need to have a therapist, to journal, that book, I wasn't ready to say goodbye. A friend sent that to me the first week that Mark died. And I'm so glad that they did. It literally was like a roadmap of how to deal with his absence, how to deal with his death, how to live my life in his absence. And that is why Widowhood Real Talk with Tina gives that book to people who are grieving, because it was a critical part of my journey, and everyone that we have shared it with, they have found it helpful. In the 1 year mark of Mark's death, I remember I'm now trying to just think about how to live. I'm now starting to come out of that fog. And I would travel from Pennsylvania to Virginia to visit family. My sister moved here, Yolanda, who I wished happy birthday to. And it was difficult because the road I had to travel was past where Mark had the heart attack and died. And I remember the first time I traveled that way, I was so devastated. And I was like, I can't live with this hanging over me. So on the 1 year anniversary of his death, I stayed in the same room at the same lodging because I needed to celebrate his life. I needed to honor him. And I brought the cards that everyone had given us at the funeral, and I read them, and I talked to Mark that night. And when I left that room, I felt freer, and that burden of driving in that area was no longer on me. And I'm grateful for my ability to lean into that. I am grateful for my family and friends that have been with me every step of the way. And I'm grateful. And that gratefulness is showing up as in Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, to be able to be there for you, for your family members, for people that feel like they are alone. I wanted to share that part of my journey of Mark's death. So when I tell you I am on this journey with you, you know that this has been quite the experience. Selling our family home, relocating, starting another job, finding love again in a way that I never thought was possible. And I share that because I want you to know sometimes grief will bind you. Sometimes grief will put you in a way that you feel stuck and you can never get out of it. And I want you to know there are options. You are still alive and you can find things that you enjoy doing. My sister living here, we went bike riding. My mom now lives here. My daughter came to visit and we went roller skating. I have read more books. I have connected deeper with friends in a way that I never did before. Yes, Mark's death has been difficult, but life seems that much more precious because of his death. And that is why I am intentionally wanting to be here with you. I want you to know that there are other people, because one of the things that I have learned in this journey, community is so important. And community may not show up the way you think and the people you want, but it is a possibility for other people to show up for you. Sometimes people you never expected to be there will show up in the most amazing way. So I encourage you on your grief journey to seek what will help with your mental health. That may be a journal. That may be finding a grief coach. It may be connecting with a therapist. It may be talking more to family and friends. Mark died in 2017 and it is 2024, and his absence still makes me feel some kind of way, and it will for the rest of my life. We learn how to shoulder or manage or hold our grief different, but I don't want you to feel like it has to go away. in a year or 2 years, the way it may impact you may change, but you will love that person forever, and that is fine. So, thank you for being here with me. Thank you for allowing me to give you a little bit more of my journey. And I hope that the conversations that we have throughout 2024 will help you as you travel this grief road. And maybe we'll get to connect. Maybe I'll meet you in person. I would like to do that. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Here for the President of the United States, United States Army, and a grateful nation. I'd like to present you this flag which your husband served under.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.